Welcome back. In this video, we're going to be covering how to configure your Odoo application in order to make ease the development. In particular, we're going to be talking about IDE. So which IDE you should be using for managing your Odoo application. And then also DOI Database Manager. If you know about PostgreSQL, you know that you can manipulate the database using what is called as PSQL. But actually, there are some good GUI applications that would make developing databases much more easier, and we are going to talk about that later. And also we are going to talk about options and configuration in Odoo. So for example, how do you set up the user for Odoo, or how do you set up a custom port for database or server. And then there is also master password, and then managing databases, how to create database on Odoo, how to remove it, how to update, and so on and so forth. And I'm also going to talk a bit about add-ons. So regarding IDE, there are actually a couple IDEs that you can use to develop Odoo. My recommendation is to use PyCharm, which is one of the most popular IDE for managing Python programs. But if you don't use PyCharm, you can alternatively use VS Code or Visual Studio Code. It is also a good choice for managing Python applications. And for the upcoming tutorials, I'm gonna be using PyCharm. So let's open up PyCharm. Okay, this is my old project, so don't worry about it. Now let's open the Odoo directory. So click open and then locate your Odoo directory. In my case, it is located at the WSL, and then home, and then projects, and then Odoo, this one here. And then after that, just hit OK. And then if you found this message, just click trust project. Okay, now that it has been loaded, you can see there are several folders and files within the Odoo directory. But the main folders that we are going to manipulate most is this particular folders, okay, add-ons, and then in here and in here, the Odoo/addons path. So these two are the most used because these two are the folders that contains add-ons. So an add-on basically kind of a sub application that you can install on your Odoo so that you can get some features from it. We are going to see about it later on. And then the other notable files are this requirements.txt. This is basically the libraries that Odoo needs in order to run, and we have installed it in the previous episode. And also this particular file, this is basically the bootstrap or the main file to run the Odoo server. And also if you expand the Debian folder, here you can see there is a file called odoo.conf. This is the file that we are going to use in order to set up some customization for our Odoo application, and we are going to talk about that later. And this particular file, the location of it may be different depending on your operating system or the way you install Odoo. So for example, in Windows, the file is located within this folder and it is located here. So odoo/server/odoo.conf, while in the Linux it is located in this particular path, odoo/debian/odoo.conf. Now let's talk a bit about managing databases on your Odoo application. So if I start my server, I'm going to go to my Odoo directory. And then if you go to the localhost colon 8069, this is the login page of Odoo. Now let's click this link, manage databases. And here you can see this is the list of databases that are available. In the previous tutorial, I have made a database which is called Odoo-test, but we cannot actually do anything. We cannot, for example, delete because it requires master password. We cannot create because it requires master password, and restore and so on. So we cannot do anything. We have to set the master password, and how we are going to do that. So to do that, first we have to open the configuration file. In my case, it is located in this particular path, and then open this particular file. This is basically the list of options that you can make in order to customize how the server is going to run. So now we have to uncomment this particular option, and then you have to specify the user that is going to be used. In my case, I have already created a user in the previous episode, which is Ihsan. Now let's go back to our terminal and then type python -bin and then -c and then the path to the configuration file. In my case, it is in this particular path. Okay, now hit enter. Now let's open up the browser again. Okay, now let's set up a master password. Click this button and then set your master password. In my case, I'm just gonna type password. Okay, now the master password has been set. Now we can do any manipulation to the databases. So for example, I can delete this database using the master password that I have set. Now here you can see the database is already deleted, and we get redirected to this page because there is no database in the server now. And now let's try to create a database. So to do that, you have to type your master password. So in my case, it is password. And then the database. In my case, let's name it Odoo-test. And in the email, your email, I'm just gonna use a fake email. Okay, now the password, I'm just gonna use password again. And then your phone number, I'm gonna use a fake phone number. And then the language, I'm okay with English. And then the country, in my case, it is Indonesia. And then this option is quite self-explanatory. So do you want to create a demo data so that the data is not empty on the application? Let's check this and then just click create database. And here you can see we have successfully logged in to our dashboard. Okay, for now I'm gonna log it again. And then if you click manage databases, here you can see the database that you've just created is listed here. The other options that you can make is that you can duplicate the database. So for example, let's name it Odoo-test duplicated. Now the database is duplicated. It will contain the exact same content with this particular database. And then we can do backup. So backup basically gonna download the database to your local so that you can use somewhere else on another computer. So let's type the master password and then just click backup. So here you can see this is the database that have been backed up. And then the other option is restoring database. This is basically gonna take your backup database and then upload it to the server so that it can be used. So let's click here and then choose file, and then let's just click our backup file. Okay, the name of the database. So for example, I'm gonna say Odoo test backup, and then click continue, and here we can see it is loaded to the server. Now to log into one of the database, just click one of them. For example, I click here, and then you type the email and password that you've set before. In my case, Chrome has saved me the email and password, so I just have to log in. Then here we can see we have successfully logged in. So I think that's it for managing databases. Now let's move on to the configuration file. So if we open this particular file, so here you can see Odoo has generated many options to the file. So there is, for example, Addons path. So this is used to specify the paths that Odoo is going to use in order to load the add-ons. So there are two here which I have talked about previously, which is Odoo/addons. So if you take a look at that path, here you can see this is the list of add-ons, and also this path. So if you take a look, here you can see this is also the list of add-ons, and we can actually add a new path to load our custom add-ons, but this is going to be taught later. I just want to tell you that this is the particular option. This is the options to tell Odoo on which paths to load the add-ons. And there is also this particular option. I honestly don't really know what this thing is. Maybe it's kind of the default master password if you haven't said it before. I don't really know what is this, to be honest. And then the other useful option is this particular option. This is db_host. So this is basically where you specify the db host. So for example, is it localhost or is it any other than that? This is basically the maximum connections that Odoo will create. So we can actually customize to like 256 and any other number. And the db name, this is to tell what database to load. So if you don't want to load all the databases, like here the active databases are all loaded, but if you don't want to do that and you want to only load a particular database, then you can specify it in this option. So for example, I'm gonna say that I only want to load Odoo test. So let's test it. Okay, now we have to restart our server. And if you refresh the page, now here you can see only Odoo test is loaded. Okay, the other option is db_password. This is the password of the database user that we are using right here. So if the user is using some password, then you must type here. And then the db_port, this is to tell on which port that your database server is running. So the default is 5432, but you can customize it for 5433 if your database is running on this port. And then the other useful options is db_user. This is where you specify the database user that would be used. And there are so many options left that I cannot cover because either I don't know or I don't have much time to do that. But you can always take a look at the official documentation because it has covered the list of options in the configuration file and also the usage of those options. So let's go to the documentation, and then if you head over to this particular segment, here you can see Odoo has explained a bit about the options in the configuration file. For example, this and also this. So if you want to go crazy about it, you can read up in this particular page. And another useful option is this option, http_port. This is to tell on which port the Odoo server is going to run. So for example, this is the default port that it is going to run, so we can change it. So let's do that. For example, change it to this port, and then let's restart our server again. Now if we refresh the page, it won't be loaded because the port has been changed. Now here you can see this is the port that the Odoo server is running. Okay, let's reverse the change because I want the Odoo to run in this particular port. Okay, I think that's it, the basic of Odoo configuration. And now let's talk a bit about Database Manager. Okay, now let's move on to the Database Manager that we are going to use. In this tutorial and the upcoming tutorials, I'm gonna be using dbeaver. So dbeaver basically is just an application that gives you a nice looking view so that you can manage your database with ease. So for example, if you take a look at this image, like for example, these are tables within the database, and you can view the data in it in a tabular view, and you can actually edit the data directly in this table without having to write any query. And to save the data that we have changed, we can click save in this particular button, or we can cancel, and so on and so forth. So this is very useful because we can manage database without having to use query too much. And the other alternative that is really popular for PostgreSQL is pgadmin. So you can also use pgadmin if you want. This is basically almost the same with dbeaver, but dbeaver is more general because it can be used for other DBMS such as, for example, MySQL, Oracle, MariaDB, SQLite, and so on and so forth, while pgadmin is only used for PostgreSQL. And to install dbeaver, just click this download page, and as you can see, there are actually two versions of dbeaver. There is a community edition and also the pro edition. So if you want to just use it for free, then you can download the community edition. And I don't need to do that because I've already installed dbeaver. So if you have already installed it, let's open it. This is the interface of dbeaver. And I have made some databases. As you can see, probably you're not gonna see anything in here. And now let's try to create a connection to the database that will be used for Odoo. So I'm gonna open up my WSL because this is where the PostgreSQL will run. And then I'm gonna type sudo service PostgreSQL start. Then type the password. It has been started, so I want to know which port it is using. It is using port 5432, so we have to make connection to this particular port. Now to do that, just right click on this area and then navigate to create and then connection. Now choose the DBMS that we are using. So we are going to use PostgreSQL, so click PostgreSQL, and then the host, in my case it is localhost, and then the port, in my case it is 5432. So we don't have to change anything here. And then the database. So in my case, it is, for example, Odoo-test, and then the username. In my case, it is Ihsan, and I don't use any password. Okay, this is looking good. And then just click test connection. Okay, so I don't really know why it is saying that there should be a password. So let's just create the password for this user, and to do that you have to go to the PSQL. So copy this line, we have to change the password, and we have to use this line to do that. Okay, the user is Ihsan, and the password, let's say password. Okay, now the user will be having password as its password. Okay, now let's first change it in the Odoo configuration. I'm gonna say it is password. Okay, now let's get back to the dbeaver. Now let's type password, and then let's try to connect. Okay, now it is connected successfully. Now click OK. Now click finish. Now here you can see the database is connected successfully, and if you go to this folder, this is the list of the databases within this particular connection. So let's open up our database, and if we go to schemas and then public and then tables, these are the tables that Odoo uses in order to load the data. And then if you go to these roles, here you can see these are the users that is available within the database. So for example, I have Ihsan and also have Postgres. So we can create a new role, for example. So let's, for example, create Ihsan2. You can type your name, and then the password, I'm going to say password 2. Okay, now click OK, and then we can set the access rights that the user will be having. So I'm going to say that it is a super user, and it can create role, and it can create database, it can log in and replication. Okay, now just click save, and then click persist. Now there is a new user here, which is Ihsan2 that we have created. You can explore more if you want, because dbeaver contains a lot of features. Okay, I think that's it for today, and I'm gonna see you in the next episode.